Stahl also asked the president about reports that his Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, had to explain to him the importance of NATO.
Is it true, General Mattis said to you, the reason for NATO and the reason for all these alliances is to prevent World War III?
No, it's not true. Frankly, I like General Mattis. I think I know more about it than he does. And I know more about it from the standpoint of fairness. That I can tell you.
And here's the president responding when asked if Mattis was leaving.
What about General Mattis? Is he going to leave?
Well, I don't know. He hasn't told me that. I have a very good relationship with him. It could be that he is. I think he's sort of a Democrat, if you want to know the truth. But General Mattis is a good guy. We get along very well. He may leave. I mean, at some point, everybody leaves.
It's all about reasserting stature and status. I'm not a baby. I'm the president. I don't think this has ever been said in the history of the American presidency. A president speaking to a journalist saying, I'm president and you're not. I mean, that's like, it's like they always say in the Army, if you have to say it's an order, you're already in trouble.
Well, Chris,
because the officer gives, Susan Verse, the officer gives the order. You don't have to keep saying, hey, I'm the boss.
Yeah. Well, but he does. I mean, I don't know if he has to keep saying it, but he does keep saying it. He keeps asserting that he's the person with power. I think that's why he loves rallies. He goes to rallies and there's no one talking back to him. Everybody is cheering him.
One speaker. Yeah. Howard.
Well, first of all, I must say that Professor Glaude is a master of understatement when he says that Donald Trump is deeply transactional with people like Kim Jong-un. I hope you appreciate the compliment, sir. But I mean, because it's worse than that. I mean, Kim Jong-un is a thug. Vladimir Putin is a thug. These are people who, in the tradition of the American presidency, presidents would have the moral authority to denounce.
So why does he like them?
He likes them because they're doing something for him. Yeah. And I must say that people who support Donald Trump love that about him. But he's also the most infantile character we have ever.
He is not a baby.
He's not a baby. He says he's not.
I'm not a baby.
Nixon's not a crook, and he's not a baby.
I'm not a baby.
It is extraordinary stuff, and I have to give credit to our colleague at the highest level, that's Leslie Stahl, to get the president to actually put his dukes up. Get those dukes up and say all this crazy stuff for the record, because that's what journalists do. They don't win the argument, they get the truth out. Thank you, Susan Page. Thank you, Eddie Glaude. Thank you, Howard.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.